Picture this. You're standing before a castle built not of stone, but of cash flow. Each brick represents a solid income-generating property that steadily pays you back month after month. Today, I'm going to share exactly how you can start building that castle, brick by brick, without getting lost in endless theory or vague promises. I know many of you have felt the sting of uncertainty. Maybe you're tired of hearing, invest in real estate and get rich, without any real direction. Perhaps you've dabbled in renting a spare room or considered buying a fixer-upper, only to feel overwhelmed by the numbers and endless jargon. Let me tell you, I've been there. When I first started out, I spent months trying to figure out what cap rate meant and why everyone kept talking about cash flow. It wasn't until I broke things down into basic, actionable steps that things started to click, and I'm here to pass that straightforward blueprint on to you. Let's start with a clear-cut reality. Every investment begins with understanding your cash flow. Cash flow is simply the money left over after all expenses are paid, the net income that fills your pockets month after month. It might sound basic, but grasping this concept is the cornerstone of building your empire. For example, when I purchased my first rental property, a modest duplex in a working-class neighborhood, I paid $80,000. After repairs and initial expenses, I rented the units for a total of $1,600 a month. Once I deducted mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, I was left with about $500 in clean profit every month. It wasn't a fortune, but that consistent income was the first brick in my cash flow castle. Now, let's address a common pain point: fear of diving in with little cash and the risk of failure. I remember a friend of mine, Mike, who worked a 9-to-5 job and barely scraped by each month. He was skeptical about real estate because he didn't have a lot of money to invest. But instead of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect property, he started small. Mike found a partner, pooled their resources, and bought a single-family home in an up-and-coming area for $100,000. With a down payment of just 15%, he managed to secure a deal that generated a monthly cash flow of over $400. Mike's story proves that even with limited funds, you can get started if you focus on the fundamentals and take a calculated risk. So, what are these actionable steps that you can implement right away? First, educate yourself on the key metrics. Know your cap rate, understand the importance of cash flow, and learn how to calculate your return on investment. Write these formulas down on an index card if you need to. Sometimes the simplest tool can be the most powerful reminder. For instance, the cap rate is calculated by dividing the net operating income by the property's current market value. If a property brings in $12,000 a year in net income and costs $200,000, your cap rate is 6%. These numbers aren't just abstract figures, they're the pulse of your investment. Next, identify a market where properties are affordable yet have potential for growth. Don't be seduced by headlines about booming markets in far-off cities. Look closer to home. Often, the best opportunities are right in your backyard. Research local neighborhoods, attend open houses, and talk to real estate agents who understand the community. I once visited a small town that most people overlooked, only to discover a cluster of homes selling at a discount. I quickly ran the numbers, and the properties not only promised good cash flow, but were also poised for appreciation as the town began revitalizing its downtown area. Real estate is local, and success often comes from knowing your local market better than anyone else. Another actionable tip: start building a network of professionals who can help you along the way. Not every investor is a numbers wizard, and that's okay. Connect with a reliable real estate agent, a seasoned property manager, and even a mentor who's been in the game. I recall my first investment meeting, sitting around a table with a diverse team, each person sharing their expertise. That meeting not only gave me confidence, but also saved me from making rookie mistakes that could have cost me thousands. Your network is your net worth. Surround yourself with people who share your vision and can point you toward the right opportunities. Let's also talk about mindset. Building a cash flow castle isn't about overnight success. It's about laying a strong foundation, brick by brick. It's easy to feel discouraged when progress seems slow, but every milestone counts. Celebrate your first property, no matter how modest. Celebrate when you see your first rent check and when you finally pay off a part of your mortgage. These milestones are proof that your efforts are working. In my journey, even when I struggled with unexpected repairs or tenant issues, each resolved problem reinforced my resolve and taught me a valuable lesson in resilience. Finally, always be ready to act. The market doesn't wait for you to be fully prepared, and sometimes opportunities pass quickly. Keep your finances in order, have a plan for emergency funds, and be ready to move when a good deal presents itself. Real estate investing rewards those who combine careful planning with timely execution. Remember, the difference between success and missed opportunities is often just a matter of being prepared to act when the moment is right. This chapter is your invitation to take that first step. It's not about getting rich quickly. It's about building a steady, reliable stream of income that grows over time. As you move forward, keep these actionable tips in mind. Understand your cash flow. Research local markets thoroughly. Build a trusted network. Maintain a resilient mindset. And always be ready to act. This is how you start laying the foundation for your cash flow castle. Welcome to Chapter 2, Laying the Foundation. In this chapter, we're cutting through the fluff to get to the heart of what makes real estate investing tick: cash flow. I'm not here to sugarcoat things or recite stock phrases. I'm here to share real, actionable tips that helped me and countless others move from confusion to confidence, one cash flow castle at a time. Let's start with the basics. When you hear cash flow, think of it as the money that comes in every month after all the bills are paid. It's the difference between your income and your expenses. And if you're serious about building wealth through real estate, cash flow is your lifeblood. I remember when I first started out, I was overwhelmed by numbers and jargon. But once I zeroed in on cash flow, it all became clear. I learned to measure a property's performance not just by its potential sale price, but by how much money it could put in my pocket every single month. Now, let's talk specifics. Imagine you're looking at a rental property that costs $150,000. Instead of getting distracted by its curb appeal or its location's trendy reputation, you break it down into hard numbers. Start with the monthly rent you can realistically charge. Say, for example, you can charge $1,200 a month. Next, deduct your monthly expenses. This includes mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and a reserve for unexpected repairs. In my early days, I encountered a property where the mortgage, taxes, and insurance totaled about $900 a month, plus $150 for maintenance, leaving me with roughly $150 positive cash flow. It wasn't a fortune, but it was proof that even on a modest property, real cash flow could be built with careful management. I know many of you are thinking, but what if I don't have enough money to get started? Trust me, I've been there. One of the first painful lessons I learned was that every investor starts with a limited budget. My friend Sarah started with just $10,000 in savings. She found a duplex that needed some work, negotiated a deal where she put down only 5%, and then reinvested every penny of her positive cash flow back into the property. Within 2 years, she had not only paid off a significant portion of her loan, but she was also generating enough extra cash to put toward her next investment. This is the kind of real-life example that shows you it's not about having a huge bank balance when you start. It's about making every dollar work for you. One actionable tip I want to emphasize is the importance of doing your homework on every property. This isn't about gut feelings or guessing games. It's about numbers. Use a simple spreadsheet to list every income source and every expense. Be brutally honest with your estimates. If a property is in need of repair, factor in a realistic cost for those repairs. Don't underestimate a $500 expense because it seems small. Those little costs add up over time. When I first started, I'd often leave out minor expenses, and that almost derailed a deal. Once, a property that looked like a gold mine turned into a money pit because I hadn't accounted for the cost of routine maintenance in an older building. Lesson learned. Always overestimate your expenses and underestimate your income until proven otherwise. I also want to address a common pain point: fear of the unknown. Many people hesitate to invest because the world of real estate seems full of complicated formulas and endless paperwork. Here's a straightforward rule. Focus on cash flow first and let everything else fall into place. This approach took years of stress off my shoulders. I remember when I closed my first deal, the satisfaction wasn't just in owning property, but in receiving that first check, knowing that all the hard work had paid off with tangible cash in hand. Another milestone many investors experience is the moment when your cash flow not only covers your expenses, but also leaves you a profit that can be reinvested. That's when you know you're on the right path. It's a turning point, a validation that your strategy is working. I've seen investors start with one small property and gradually build a portfolio that supports their entire lifestyle. And while every journey is unique, the common thread is always a deep understanding of cash flow and a disciplined approach to tracking every dollar. Let's not forget about leveraging tools and technology. Today, there are plenty of apps and online calculators that make analyzing a property's cash flow easier than ever. If you're not using these tools, you're leaving money on the table. I started using a simple cash flow calculator app on my phone, and it transformed my decision-making process. Within minutes, I could see if a property was worth pursuing or if it was simply too risky. Before we wrap up this chapter, I want to leave you with one more piece of advice. Always keep learning and stay grounded in your numbers. Real estate investing isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's about patience, discipline, and a relentless focus on building steady, reliable cash flow. The foundation you lay now, by understanding these core principles and applying them with diligence, will support every future decision you make as you build your empire. So, take out a pen and paper, fire up your favorite spreadsheet, and start breaking down a property's potential cash flow today. Measure, analyze, and adjust. This is the cornerstone of turning your dream into a reality. Remember, every great castle was built one stone at a time, and every dollar of cash flow is one stone closer to your financial fortress. That's it for this chapter. In the next section, we'll dive into blueprints of investment, where we take these foundational numbers and turn them into a strategic plan for finding your first deal. Until then, keep your eyes on the numbers and your mind focused on the goal. Welcome to Chapter 3, Blueprints of Investment. Now, let's roll up our sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty of how to scout, evaluate, and select properties that can truly transform your financial future. This isn't about vague ideas or abstract metrics. It's about real properties, real numbers, and the kind of actionable tips that worked for investors like you and for me. I remember when I first stepped into the market. I was overwhelmed by endless listings and complex jargon. But I quickly learned that the secret is not to get lost in the noise. Instead, you focus on a few key indicators that tell you if a property is worth your time and money. Let's start with the basics: location, price, and potential for cash flow. First, consider location. Not in the "I want to live in a trendy area" kind of way, but in the "what are the market fundamentals" sense. Look for properties in neighborhoods with stable or growing employment, a history of property value appreciation, and low vacancy rates. For instance, take the case of a duplex I encountered in a mid-sized city. The area wasn't glamorous on paper, but the local manufacturing sector was booming. I ran the numbers. Rental rates were 15% higher than similar areas with declining industries, and vacancy was under 5%. That's a signal worth paying attention to. Now, once you zero in on a location, the next step is the property itself. Here's a tip that changed the game for me. Always use a simple cash flow calculator. It doesn't have to be a complex spreadsheet. I used a basic formula: rental income, operating expenses, debt service equals cash flow. When I bought a small fourplex, I meticulously listed out every expense, from property management fees, typically 8 to 10% of rental income, to insurance, maintenance, and even an estimated reserve for unexpected repairs. In that particular deal, the monthly rental income was $4,000. Expenses came to about $1,500, and debt service was $1,200. That left me with a positive cash flow of $1,300 a month. It's this kind of number that tells you, yes, this property has the potential to be a cash flow castle. Now, let's talk about cap rates. The cap rate is simply the net operating income divided by the property's purchase price. It's a quick metric to gauge the return on your investment if you bought the property outright. A good cap rate varies by market, But generally, if you're seeing rates above 7 to 8%, you're in the ballpark for a strong investment. I recall a friend who was analyzing a triplex in an emerging suburb. The property was listed at $300,000 and generated a net operating income of $27,000 a year. Do the math, and that's a 9% cap rate. Instead of shying away, he dug deeper. He found that the area was slated for new infrastructure improvements, meaning the property could appreciate even further while maintaining that steady cash flow. It was a win-win. But numbers only tell part of the story. There's also the human element. I learned early on that properties come with personalities, and sometimes those personalities can hint at hidden costs or opportunities. When I toured a small apartment building, I noticed that one of the units had several layers of outdated fixtures. Instead of dismissing it as a lost cause, I saw potential. I calculated that spending $15,000 on renovations could boost the rent by $150 per month per unit. Multiply that by 4 units, and you're looking at an extra $600 a month in rental income. That simple renovation plan turned a mediocre property into a highly profitable asset within just a few months of implementation. Actionable tip: when evaluating a property, always ask yourself, what's the minimum amount of work required to bring this property to its full potential? And then, crunch the numbers. If the renovation costs add up to less than 10% of the property's purchase price and significantly increase your monthly cash flow, you've found a hidden gem. I also want to stress the importance of doing your homework on each property's history. Look up past sales data, neighborhood trends, and any local news that might affect property values. I once encountered a property that seemed perfect on the surface: solid structure, good cash flow, and a promising location. But after a bit of research, I discovered that the area was slated for rezoning, which would allow for multifamily development in the future. That meant potential for property value surge, or conversely, increased competition. In my case, I decided to negotiate a lower price to hedge against the uncertainty. Always remember, the more informed you are, the better you can negotiate and protect your investment. Let's not ignore financing for a moment. When you find a property with solid numbers, the next hurdle is financing it. Shop around for lenders who understand investment properties. Look for those who offer flexible terms and lower interest rates. For instance, I worked with a local credit union that offered a rate nearly a full percentage point lower than big banks. Over the life of a 30-year mortgage, that difference can amount to tens of thousands of dollars saved, which directly boosts your cash flow. As we move forward, remember that investing in real estate isn't a one-size-fits-all formula. Your blueprint for investment should adapt to the specific market conditions and the type of property you're considering. If you're just starting, consider smaller properties like duplexes or small apartment buildings that allow you to learn the ropes without overextending financially. I started with a 2-unit property in a neighborhood I knew well, and it provided me with the confidence to move on to larger deals. Finally, set measurable milestones. For example, aim to close your first deal within 6 months of intensive market research. Track your progress. How many properties did you evaluate? What were the cash flow projections for each? Document every step, every negotiation, and every lesson learned. Over time, these records become your personal blueprint, an invaluable resource that refines your strategy and helps you avoid past mistakes. In summary, the blueprint of investment boils down to a few core principles. Focus on key metrics like cash flow and cap rate. Do your homework on the property's history and the local market. Negotiate with a clear understanding of renovation costs and financing terms. And most importantly, adapt your strategy based on your personal milestones and real-world experiences. This isn't abstract theory. It's the very process I used to build my first portfolio, and it's the roadmap you can follow to build your very own cash flow castle. Now, take these actionable steps, crunch those numbers, and start turning properties into profit. Your first blueprint is waiting to be drawn. Chapter 4: Financing Your Fortress. Welcome back, future castle builders. This is Chapter 4, Financing Your Fortress, where we break down the concrete steps to fund your real estate adventure. Today, we're diving straight into the nuts and bolts of financing. No fluff, just real actionable tips. Let's start by addressing a common pain point, feeling overwhelmed by the numbers and jargon of financing. I remember my first property purchase like it was yesterday. I was staring at my credit report, wondering if my score was good enough to get a decent mortgage rate. I felt like I needed a PhD just to understand terms like LTV and amortization. But here's the truth. It's not rocket science. Once you understand a few key principles, you're in control. Tip 1. Know your credit score inside and out. Before you even start shopping for properties, pull your credit report and know your score. This number dictates the interest rate you'll be offered and, by extension, how much cash flow you keep each month. For example, I discovered that by improving my score from 680 to 720, I cut my interest rate by almost 1%, which saved me over $150 a month on a $200,000 loan. How? I paid off a small debt and set up automated bill payments. Simple, right? When you know your credit score, you can identify what needs fixing and start tackling it head on. Tip 2. Shop around for the best financing. When I first stepped into a bank, I thought, this is it. They're my only option. Not true. There are dozens of lenders out there, community banks, credit unions, and even online lenders, all competing for your business. Do your homework. Get quotes from at least 3 different sources. Compare interest rates, closing costs, and terms. A 0.5% difference might not sound like much, but over a 30-year loan on a $200,000 property, it can add up to tens of thousands in savings. I remember switching lenders on a deal and how that small margin transformed a tight cash flow into a comfortable monthly budget. Tip 3. Understand your financing options. There's a world beyond the conventional 30-year fixed mortgage. Look into adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs, portfolio loans, or even seller financing if you're in a pinch. Let me share a case study. A friend of mine, Mark, was eyeing a duplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood. The conventional bank offered him a 30-year fixed, but the monthly payments were too steep. Instead, he secured an ARM with a lower initial rate, saving him around $250 a month for the first 5 years. Sure, rates could adjust later, but for him, those first 5 years were crucial for stabilizing his cash flow and building equity. Understand the pros and cons of each financing type and choose the one that fits your short and long-term strategy. Tip 4. Leverage other people's money. OPM. Real estate investing isn't just about your personal savings. It's about smart leverage. One of the most powerful tools in our arsenal is OPM, using other people's money to finance your deals. This can be in the form of partnerships, hard money loans, or even private investors. When I closed my first deal, I partnered with a small group of investors who contributed the down payment while I managed the property. The result? I secured a property worth $250,000 with only 20% down, and our combined efforts turned that property into a monthly cash flow of nearly $1,000 after expenses. The key is to present a clear, data-driven plan that shows potential partners exactly how they'll see a return on their investment. Tip 5. Keep your debt-to-income ratio in check. Lenders aren't just looking at your credit score, they're also examining your debt-to-income ratio, DTI. If you're carrying too much debt, you might be stuck with less favorable terms or even get denied. A friend of mine learned this the hard way. He had a great property lined up, but was declined by his lender because his DTI was over the limit. His solution? He paid down his credit card balances and restructured his personal loans, bringing his DTI into a manageable range. The lesson here is clear. Before you apply for a mortgage, tackle any high-interest debts. This not only improves your borrowing power, but also sets you up for a smoother financing process. Tip 6. Build a cash reserve. Imagine this. You secure a property with what appears to be excellent financing terms, but then an unexpected repair or vacancy hits. That's why lenders love seeing a healthy cash reserve. I always recommend having at least 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved up, not just for emergencies, but as a cushion that can make your financing package more attractive. One investor I worked with, Sarah, used her reserves to negotiate a better rate. When the lender saw her financial discipline, they were more willing to adjust the terms to suit her needs. Tip 7. Don't be afraid to negotiate. Finally, remember that every deal is negotiable. This applies not just to the purchase price, but to the financing terms as well. If you have a solid credit profile and a well-prepared investment plan, use that leverage. Ask for a reduction in closing costs or for a lower interest rate. I once negotiated a 0.75% reduction on a deal by simply having multiple offers on the table and clearly outlining my repayment plan. The lender, seeing my commitment and the competitive landscape, backed off on some of their fees. Bringing it all together. Financing your real estate fortress is about more than just signing on the dotted line. It's about taking control of your financial destiny by understanding the mechanics of debt, leveraging available resources, and negotiating hard for the best terms. Remember, the goal is to maximize your cash flow so that every dollar you spend today brings in more dollars tomorrow. If you're feeling daunted by the financing process, take a deep breath and focus on these actionable steps. Know your numbers, shop around, understand your options, leverage OPM, manage your debt wisely, build a cash reserve, and negotiate with confidence. Each step is a milestone on your journey to financial freedom. I want you to imagine your first property deal not as a high-stakes gamble, but as a well-planned move in a game where every decision is calculated. Picture the satisfaction when your numbers come back, and you realize that by following these clear, actionable steps, you've secured not just a property, but a true cash flow castle. As we wrap up this chapter, remember, financing isn't just about getting a loan. It's about setting the stage for long-term success. Your fortress will stand strong when its foundation is built on smart, deliberate financial decisions. So, review your credit, gather your resources, and step confidently into negotiations. The keys to your castle are in your hands. Now, take a moment to reflect on your own financial standing. What simple step can you take today to improve your credit score or reduce your debt? Write it down, set a goal, and start making those changes. Because every fortress begins with a single stone, and today you're laying the cornerstone of your financial empire. And that's a wrap on financing your fortress. Up next, we'll explore how renovations and value-add magic turn your solid foundation into a thriving, cash-generating masterpiece. Stay tuned and keep building. Welcome to Chapter 5, Renovation and Value-Add Magic. Imagine this. You're standing in a rundown duplex on the outskirts of town. The paint is peeling, the floors creak under every step, and the outdated fixtures scream for a makeover. I once inherited a property just like that, one that most investors would have written off as a money pit. But instead of tearing my hair out, I saw opportunity. I rolled up my sleeves, set a budget, and got to work. Today, I'm going to walk you through actionable, real-world strategies to transform any property into a cash flow machine. Let's start with the basics. Identify what can add real value. In my first renovation, I discovered that simple fixes often yield the highest return. I began by focusing on curb appeal, a fresh coat of exterior paint, landscaping that isn't over the top, and repairing that front porch can literally make or break a property's first impression. For instance, I spent just over $1,000 on painting and minor landscaping for a property that subsequently saw its rental value increase by 15%. That's not magic. That's smart, targeted work. Next, inside the property, focus on the kitchen and bathrooms. These areas sell any home. Instead of completely gutting the space, I learned to concentrate on high-impact, low-cost improvements. Replace outdated cabinet handles. Install energy-efficient light fixtures, and if the countertops are old, consider a refinishing kit rather than a full replacement. In one project, I invested about $2,500 on targeted updates in the kitchen and 2 bathrooms. Within months, I saw a 20% bump in rental income and a significant boost in property value. The numbers speak for themselves. Now, let's talk about floor plans. Sometimes the layout of a property can be an investor's secret weapon. I once renovated a small apartment building that had a peculiar layout which made the living spaces feel cramped. By removing a non-structural wall, I opened up the living area and created a more inviting communal space. It wasn't a massive construction project, just a few hours of skilled labor, and the tenant feedback was immediate. Prospective renters appreciated the modern feel and the enhanced flow, and the occupancy rate jumped from 85% to 95% in just 1 month. But renovations aren't solely about the aesthetics or layout. They're also about operational efficiency. Here's where property management becomes a game changer. It's one thing to renovate. It's another to ensure your tenants are happy and that your property is running like a well-oiled machine. After completing renovations, I made sure to install systems that would lower ongoing costs. For example, I added programmable thermostats and energy-efficient appliances. In one project, these changes cut the utility expenses by nearly 10% per month. It might seem small at first, but when you multiply those savings across several units and over time, it adds up quickly. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, renovations sound great, but what if I don't have the funds to get started? That's a common pain point. The key here is to budget wisely and start small. You don't need to remodel an entire building overnight. Prioritize improvements that have a clear and immediate return on investment. I always advise new investors to set aside a renovation reserve, typically around 10 to 15% of the purchase price. For example, if you buy a property for $150,000, plan on having at least $15,000 ready for necessary improvements. In my experience, having that cash on hand can mean the difference between a project that flounders and one that transforms a property into a profitable asset. Let's dig deeper into actionable steps you can take right now. 1. Conduct a thorough walkthrough. Before you even purchase a property, get a clear understanding of its current state. Bring in a contractor if necessary. Ask for detailed estimates on what needs to be fixed versus what can be improved later. The more detailed your plan, the less likely you are to encounter unexpected costs. 2. Prioritize projects based on ROI. Not every project is worth doing. Focus on improvements that will yield immediate rent increases or significantly reduce operating costs. Kitchens, bathrooms, and energy efficiency are usually your top performers. Avoid expensive luxury upgrades unless you're in a market that demands them. 3. Leverage local talent. When hiring contractors or handymen, don't automatically go for the lowest bid, but do your research. Ask for referrals, check reviews, and get at least 3 estimates. In one case, I compared quotes for installing new flooring and discovered that a local team not only offered a competitive rate, but also had a proven track record of finishing on time. The difference in quality and speed made all the difference. 4. Implement small-scale updates as trial runs. If you're not sure whether a big renovation will pay off, start small. For example, try updating the lighting or repainting a single unit to gauge tenant reactions and see if you can charge a premium on rent. Use that feedback to decide if more extensive work is justified. 5. Plan for contingencies. Renovation projects rarely go exactly as planned. Always budget an extra 10 to 20% for unexpected costs. I once planned a renovation that came in at $8,000, but due to a surprise issue with the plumbing, the final cost was closer to $9,500. It's better to have that cushion than to scramble for cash mid-project. Throughout my journey, I've learned that each renovation project is a story, a chapter in the larger narrative of building wealth through real estate. There were moments of frustration when projects took longer than expected, but every setback taught me a valuable lesson. I remember one property that had significant water damage behind the walls. Instead of panicking, I treated it as a learning opportunity. I consulted with experts, reassessed my approach, and ultimately executed a targeted repair that not only fixed the issue but also improved the insulation. That project ended up increasing the property's market value by over 12% and reduced heating costs noticeably during the winter months. These aren't just abstract numbers. These are milestones that help me, and can help you, build a more resilient, profitable investment portfolio. Renovation and value-add strategies are not about flashy, expensive overhauls. They're about smart, strategic improvements that make a measurable impact on your bottom line. So, as you stand before your next potential investment, look at every flaw and outdated feature as an opportunity, a chance to add value, increase cash flow, and ultimately build your own cash flow castle. Remember, every improvement you make is a step toward financial freedom. Take these actionable steps, adapt them to your market, and don't be afraid to get your hands a little dirty. Because in the world of real estate, the magic happens when you take initiative, invest wisely, and transform challenges into triumphs. And that's the real power of renovation and value-add magic. Welcome to Chapter 6, Building Your Dream Team. In this chapter, we're going to cut through the fluff and get right to the nitty-gritty of assembling a group of professionals who will help you build your cash flow castles. I'm not talking about hiring friends or acquaintances just to say you have a team. I'm talking about a carefully chosen crew, experts who have proven their mettle and who can provide you with actionable insights. Let's get straight into it. When I first started investing, I thought I could do it all by myself. I quickly learned that trying to juggle everything alone not only slows you down, but leaves you vulnerable to mistakes that cost you money. Take my friend Dan, for example. Dan started with a single rental property, but didn't have a reliable contractor, a savvy real estate agent, or even a knowledgeable property manager. One day, a simple plumbing problem turned into a $2,000 repair because he hadn't taken the time to vet a contractor who truly understood his vision. That's when he decided it was time to build his dream team. So, who should be on your team? Let's break it down. First, your real estate agent isn't just someone who lists properties. They're your eyes on the market. Look for an agent who has a track record of at least 50 transactions in your target area. Ask for references, and don't be afraid to call past clients. For example, my agent Lisa closed 75 deals in her first 2 years. Her deep local knowledge saved me on 2 separate occasions by helping me identify hidden pitfalls that only a seasoned local could spot. When you speak with your agent, ask questions like, "What's the average days on market in this area?" Or, "Can you show me comparable deals?" Their answers will help you gauge whether they truly know the market. Next, a strong lender is indispensable. A bank loan is often the backbone of your financing strategy. I recommend finding a lender who not only offers competitive rates, but also understands real estate investing. I once worked with a lender who offered a rate that was 0.5% lower than the market average because he understood the numbers behind rental income and cash flow. When shopping for a lender, ask for detailed scenarios. What's my maximum loan-to-value ratio? Or how will a slight change in interest rates impact my monthly payments? Look for transparency. A lender who explains every step is worth their weight in gold. Then there's the property manager. This isn't a nice-to-have if you're aiming for long-term cash flow. For example, my buddy Sarah once neglected hiring a professional manager and ended up with a vacancy rate of nearly 20% because she couldn't keep up with tenant issues. I learned from her misstep. A good property manager should be able to reduce vacancies to below 5% by maintaining excellent tenant relations and timely maintenance. Ask for metrics from potential managers. What's your average turnaround time for repairs? Or, how do you handle tenant screenings? Real numbers and past performance will tell you if they're the right fit. Don't forget the role of an attorney, especially one who specializes in real estate. This is not about expensive legal jargon, but about protecting your investment. I once faced a situation where a poorly drafted lease agreement almost cost me a hefty lawsuit. A good real estate attorney can save you thousands by ensuring that every contract, lease, and deal is airtight. When you talk to potential attorneys, ask them to walk you through a typical deal. Their ability to break it down in plain language is a sign they can help you avoid legal pitfalls. Now, I want to share a personal story. A few years back, I was considering a multifamily investment. I had done my homework, crunched the numbers, and I was excited about the prospect of scaling up. But I was missing one crucial piece: the right team. I brought in my agent, a trusted lender, and a property manager who came highly recommended. However, during our initial meetings, I sensed a disconnect with the property manager. He couldn't provide clear metrics or past performance data, and his vague responses left me uneasy. I decided to keep looking. I eventually found someone who not only had a solid portfolio of properties under management, but also shared specific case studies with measurable outcomes. Within 6 months, that property manager reduced the average vacancy in my portfolio from 8% to 3%, which meant an additional $500 a month in cash flow per unit. That's the difference a well-vetted team member can make. Networking plays a critical role in building your team. Attend local real estate meetups, join online forums, and don't be shy about asking for referrals. I've attended over 30 networking events in the last 2 years alone, and each time I met someone who turned out to be a game changer. One event led me to a contractor who had a reputation for quality work at a fair price. A contractor whose pricing was 15% lower than average without sacrificing quality. When talking to potential team members, be direct. Show me examples of your recent work. Or, can you provide references from other investors? Real, actionable information is key. Now, let's talk about another important point. Alignment. It's not enough to have a team of experts. They need to share your vision and work in sync. When I started expanding my portfolio, I noticed that having team members who didn't understand my cash flow goals led to conflicts and delays. I learned to set clear expectations from the start. In one instance, I had a property manager who wasn't on board with my aggressive tenant screening standards. I sat him down and explained that every extra day a unit sits vacant costs me money. We agreed on a new protocol, and within 3 months, occupancy improved dramatically. Clear communication and aligned goals are non-negotiable. Lastly, remember that your team is an investment in your future. It might seem like an added expense at first, but think of it as spending money to make money. For instance, if a property manager charges 8% of monthly rent and they manage to reduce vacancies by 50%, the return on that investment is undeniable. Always calculate the cost versus the potential gains. Ask yourself, what is the added value of having this expert on board? When the numbers add up, it's a no-brainer. To sum it up, building your dream team isn't about collecting business cards or having a list of names in your phone. It's about rigorously vetting each person, ensuring they offer concrete, measurable benefits, and aligning them with your specific goals. Take the time to ask tough questions, demand transparency, and verify their track records. Your success in real estate investing isn't just about finding the right properties. It's about surrounding yourself with the right people who will help you turn those properties into long-term, steady cash flow. Remember, every dollar you invest in assembling a competent team is a dollar invested in your financial freedom. Now, get out there, network, ask the hard questions, and build a team that doesn't just support your vision. They propel it forward. Chapter 7, Risk, Rewards, and Resilience. Listen up. Real estate investing isn't a magic pill for instant riches. It's a journey full of ups and downs. And if you're going to build your empire, you need to know how to manage risks, celebrate wins, and bounce back when things don't go as planned. I'm not here to sugarcoat it. There will be setbacks. But I'm also here to show you how to turn those challenges into stepping stones for lasting success. Let me start with a story. A few years back, I worked with a friend, let's call him Mike, who was fresh into his first property investment. Mike found what he thought was the perfect duplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood. The numbers looked solid on paper, a 7% cap rate and an expected monthly cash flow that would cover his mortgage and leave him some breathing room. But Mike overlooked one critical detail. The property had hidden maintenance issues that weren't obvious during the initial inspection. Within 6 months, he was faced with unexpected repair bills totaling nearly $15,000. Instead of panicking, Mike took a deep breath, reevaluated his cash flow projections, and negotiated a deal with his lender to refinance the property. That moment, when he confronted his mistake head-on, was his turning point. He learned that rigorous due diligence isn't optional. It's your first line of defense against unforeseen expenses. So here's the first actionable tip. Always do a comprehensive inspection before sealing any deal. Hire a trusted inspector, ask tough questions, and if a property looks too good to be true, dig deeper. Calculate your worst-case scenario. In Mike's case, that meant planning for a repair fund equal to at least 10% of the property's purchase price. It's not glamorous, but when the unexpected hits, you'll be glad you were prepared. Now let's talk about the risk of market fluctuations. Even if you're buying smart, markets change, and what seemed like a booming neighborhood yesterday might slow down tomorrow. I remember a client, Sarah, who bought a small apartment building in a suburban market that was on the rise. For the first couple of years, her property generated strong cash flow, and she was confident enough to take on a second property. Then, unexpectedly, the local job market took a hit when a major employer closed down. Rental rates dipped and vacancy rates spiked. Sarah didn't have to face a financial catastrophe because she had built a safety net, a reserve fund that equaled 6 months of operating expenses. She weathered the storm without cutting back on her investments, and when the market recovered, she was in a position to buy again at a discount. Here's another tip. Always maintain an emergency fund that covers at least half a year's worth of expenses. Think of it as your investment's airbag. When market conditions shift, you'll have the funds to cover temporary vacancies or lower rents without being forced to sell at a loss. Risk isn't just about numbers, it's also about timing. Many beginners are tempted to rush into deals because they fear missing out on what they think is the perfect opportunity. Let me be clear, there is no perfect deal. Every property has its risks. The key is to recognize them and mitigate them before they turn into costly mistakes. I once advised an investor to walk away from a property that looked promising on the surface, but had a history of frequent tenant turnover. He later found out that the turnover was due to the property's location near a noisy industrial area, a factor that was glaring in hindsight. The lesson? Always research the neighborhood thoroughly. Look at vacancy rates, tenant reviews, and even talk to current residents if you can. You're not just buying a building, you're buying into a community and its future potential. Next, let's discuss the reward part of risk. You know the saying, no pain, no gain. Real rewards in real estate come when you're willing to take calculated risks. Take, for example, the strategy of forced appreciation. A few years ago, I met an investor who purchased an outdated rental property with below-market rents. Instead of waiting for the market to catch up, he invested $30,000 in targeted renovations, updating the kitchens, adding energy-efficient windows, and improving the curb appeal. Within a year, his property's value jumped by nearly 20%, and he was able to increase rents by 15%. What's more, his initial investment in renovations paid off within 18 months through increased cash flow. That's a concrete example of turning a risk into a reward. So here's another actionable tip. Look for properties where you can add value through smart, measured improvements. Set a clear budget for renovations and stick to it. Always compare the cost of improvements to the potential increase in property value and rental income. And remember, every dollar you invest in making your property better should ideally bring a return that exceeds the expense within a set time frame. Resilience is the backbone of any long-term investor. You're going to encounter losses. That's just part of the game. What sets successful investors apart is their ability to learn from these setbacks and adjust their strategies. If a property underperforms, don't despair. Analyze why it didn't meet expectations. Was it the location? The management? The financing structure? Use that information to refine your approach for the next deal. I recall a case where an investor over-leveraged his portfolio during a market upswing. When interest rates eventually climbed, his monthly expenses ballooned and cash flow turned negative. Instead of folding, he restructured his loans and reduced unnecessary expenses, and within a year, his properties returned to profitability. His story is a powerful reminder. Resilience isn't about never failing, it's about bouncing back smarter every time. Finally, set measurable milestones. Track your progress, not just in terms of dollars, but in tangible steps. For instance, aim to build an emergency fund that covers 6 months of expenses within your first year of investing. Set targets for reducing vacancy rates by a specific percentage, or for improving net operating income by a set margin after renovations. Milestones provide you with clear markers of success, and they make the inevitable challenges more manageable. In summary, managing risk in real estate isn't about eliminating it. It's about understanding, preparing for, and strategically mitigating it. Do thorough due diligence, maintain an adequate reserve fund, and always be ready to adjust your approach when circumstances change. And when you take a calculated risk that pays off, celebrate it as proof that the rewards can be substantial. Remember, the path to building your cash flow castle is paved with smart decisions, resilience in the face of setbacks, and a relentless commitment to learning and adapting. Keep your eyes on the long-term goal, and don't let temporary setbacks derail your journey. The challenges you face today will become the foundation of your success tomorrow, turning every risk into an opportunity to build a stronger and more resilient empire. Chapter 8, Scaling Your Empire. All right. Let's talk about taking that first successful property and every successful property that follows and turning it into a full-blown, diversified real estate portfolio. I know many of you are tired of feeling stuck with just one or two properties, worrying about market changes, or simply wondering how to jump from just starting out to building an empire. Today, I'm going to break it down for you in clear, actionable steps. No fluff, no sugarcoating. Let's start with this. You've already built your first cash flow castle. You've seen firsthand how a steady monthly income can relieve some of those financial worries that keep you awake at night. But if you're here, you're ready for more. You're ready to scale. And scaling isn't about randomly buying any property. It's about following a system that works, iterating on what's already successful, and using smart leverage to multiply your returns. One of the first things to consider is reinvesting your profits. Think of it this way. Every extra dollar your property puts into your pocket is a building block for your next investment. Instead of letting that cash sit in your bank account, earning next to nothing in interest, put it back into the game. For instance, I once had a client, let's call him Mark, who reinvested the surplus cash from his first rental. Mark was earning around $500 a month from a single property, and instead of spending that money, he put it aside. Within 18 months, he had saved enough for a down payment on his second property. Today, Mark owns 5 properties, and his monthly cash flow has multiplied significantly. It's a perfect example of how reinvesting your gains can create exponential growth. Now let's talk numbers and specifics. When you're looking at a new property, always run the numbers, not just a quick mental math check, but a detailed analysis. Use a cash flow calculator to determine your net operating income, factor in your financing costs, and then calculate your cap rate. If you're unfamiliar with these terms, take a moment now to research them. Real talk. If the numbers don't make sense, walk away. Don't let the fear of missing out push you into a bad deal. I remember another investor, Lisa, who almost made the mistake of buying a property because it looked like a bargain on paper. After crunching the numbers, she realized the operating costs were nearly double what she had estimated. Lisa walked away from that deal, and a few months later, she found another property with a 20% better cap rate. The lesson here is simple. Precise calculations save you from costly mistakes. Next up is leveraging your equity wisely. As you build up more properties, your accumulated equity becomes a powerful tool. Don't be afraid to tap into that equity to finance further investments. For example, one strategy is the BRRR method. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. When you refinance, you might pull out cash that you can then use as a down payment for another property. This is how you accelerate your growth. Just remember, refinancing is a tool, not a magic wand. Use it wisely and always account for the interest and fees involved. Networking is another critical piece of scaling your empire. Now, I know what you're thinking. I already have a few contacts. Why do I need more? Well, here's the thing. The more people you know, the more opportunities you have to find properties, financing, and even partnerships that can lead to multifamily or commercial deals. For instance, I've met countless investors who started out as complete beginners. They attended local real estate meetups, joined online forums, and even started small mastermind groups. One of my mentees, Javier, attended a monthly meetup in his city. Over time, he built relationships with agents, lenders, and even a few seasoned investors who eventually partnered with him on larger deals. In 1 year, Javier went from owning one property to co-investing in a 6-unit apartment building, a deal that brought him triple the cash flow of his initial investment. While networking, always keep an eye out for potential partnerships. Sometimes joining forces with other investors can open doors that you couldn't access on your own. This isn't about giving up control, it's about expanding your reach. When you collaborate, you can pool resources, share expertise, and take on deals that might be too big or too risky to handle solo. Look for partners who have strengths that complement your own, whether that's expertise in property management, local market knowledge, or even a knack for creative financing. Now, let's address a common pain point: fear of overextending. Scaling your empire is exciting, but it comes with risks. One misstep, and you could be spread too thin financially or operationally. So, how do you manage that risk? Diversification is key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket across different markets, property types, or even financing structures. For example, if you have properties in one city, consider looking at emerging markets where property prices are lower, but the potential for cash flow is strong. A friend of mine, Carla, used this strategy perfectly. She owned 2 rental homes in a high-cost urban area and decided to diversify by purchasing a duplex in a smaller town. Not only did this reduce her overall risk, but it also provided a new revenue stream that wasn't as affected by the economic cycles of the larger market. Lastly, document every milestone and learn from each step. Scaling is as much about reflection as it is about action. Keep a detailed record of your investments, the decisions you made, and the outcomes, both good and bad. This isn't just for your personal archive. It's a blueprint for future deals. Many seasoned investors swear by this practice. They review their records regularly, fine-tuning their strategies based on what worked and what didn't. Think of it as your personal index card of actionable advice. Every time you close a deal, ask yourself, what did I learn? How can I apply this to the next investment? This habit will not only sharpen your skills, but also build your confidence as you scale. To wrap this up, scaling your real estate empire isn't about chasing the next big deal. It's about building on a solid foundation, reinvesting your profits, leveraging your equity, expanding your network, managing risks wisely, and continually learning from your experiences. It's a step-by-step process that, when done right, can lead to life-changing financial freedom. So, if you're ready to take that next leap, start by reviewing your current portfolio, crunching those numbers again, and planning your next move. Every property is a stepping stone to the next, and before you know it, your cash flow castles will form an unbreakable empire. Remember, success in real estate isn't reserved for the experts. It's built by those who take smart, calculated risks and learn along the way. Now, it's your turn to scale your empire, one strategic move at a time.